Hello everyone. Welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this video, it's finally time to go back and take a look at Zen Tamer of Purpose. Sadly, Zen did receive some bans, as you can see from this deck only having 3 copies of Bonds of Ancestry. So the first Zen video we did will be out of date, and I did say I was going to do a less Bonds heavy Zen list, but that deck even still played 3 blue. So of course, since we can't do that anymore, I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at a Zen list, perfectly playable, after the ban of yellow and blue Bonds of Ancestry. I'm also planning on making a Katsu video, so if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and while you're there, please, I would appreciate it if you left a like on the video or maybe even commented. But with all of that, let's get started with the deck list. Let's start off with the equipment. None of these have really changed from what Zen has been playing for this time. Tiger Taming Kakra is still the strongest weapon, letting you come in with at least 1 tiger for damage each turn, as well as just being a 2 for 2 go again, not being that bad. Traverse the Universe as well as Stride of Appraisal still being some of the strongest cards your deck can play, generating you bonus card advantage. Traverse gives you a free chi as long as you've transcended at least once in a game, and Stride of Appraisal can give you a tiger that can easily be banished to your first or whichever Art of War that you need it for. 12 Petal Kasaya, so important when you're playing Zen because on turns that he is transcending, it really does feel like you need that bonus resource. And Tiger Stripe Shuko, since it just is a bunch of extra damage that just helps you win games as well as can be some block later. Before we talk about the main board of the deck, we need to talk about the sideboarded equipment. For this, we are playing 3 Arcane Barrier, Null Rune Gloves, Arcane Lantern, and Tide Flippers. Versus Rune Blades, I would say to bring in the Tide Flippers. Even though Strides of Appraisal are very strong, the bonus damage and block value from your Tiger Stripe Shuko is very good, and you can still banish tigers that you make off Zen's own ability to your Art of Wars. And then into Wizard, you're of course bringing in all 3. We also have Spellfray Tiara just here for 1 extra prevention, since you can't block with Traverse the Universe against a Wizard. Then we are playing 2 copies of Zephyr Needle. I've been thinking a lot about which card is actually better, Zephyr Needle or Talishar, and been looking at a lot of results. And I think now I can say that Zephyr Needle seems to be a little better. Zephyr Needle is a 2 attack dagger that becomes destroyed if it's ever blocked by an amount higher than its power, which can seem pretty bad, but you're bringing this into mainly the mirror, and I guess a few other aggro matchups, something like KO possibly, where you're not planning on attacking with your weapon a whole lot. So Zephyr Needle, for the times you do attack with it, is definitely more worth it than the Kasaya the Kakra that you are playing for most of your other matchups, as well as you need a one-handed weapon to bring in with your Lantern, and swinging your weapon into a Kano is generally pretty bad, which is why a lot of Katsus opt for Arcane Lantern as well, since you don't want to swing double Kodachi into a Kano. Looking at the main board of the deck, we have a lot of the usual suspects. Aspect of Tiger Body and Chase the Tail are just really strong cards that present some pretty good damage. Aspect Body mainly here to give you a second tiger off of Chase the Tail, which gives your next tiger +3 if it combos off of a tiger, making this pretty much a 1 for 7. We of course are on the 3 red Bonds of Ancestry. I don't think anyone expects that card to go away. But we're still playing our 6 copies of Descendant Gustwave, being the 3 red and 3 blue. The reason for this is because Blue Descendant Gustwave is still a card that can enable our Transcends, and that's an effect that we're really looking for, since Blue Bonds of Ancestry can't come in after a Red Descendant anymore. So I think the need to have more blue actual attacks in our deck is very high, so we have the Descendant Gustwaves. As well as you can still draw these and then search for bonds off of Zen. So if you have a turn where you have something to pitch to Descendant and a Transcend card and this blue Descendant, you can play the Descendant, play the Transcend, and then tutor up your bonds, which can let you play any of the other combo cards in your deck. Real nice. Still want the 6 copies of Descendant Gustwave. Alongside that, we have our 6 copies of 100 Winds. The reds just because they're good damage, and the blues because they are blues. We're also playing 3 copies of Mauling Key and 3 copies of Tiger Swipe as extra cards that can come in off of our Crouching Tigers. The rest is a little off. Of course, we're on 3 red Spinning Wheel Kick, since that's a card we were playing a lot before, but now we're also on the include of blue Spinning Wheel Kick. This is just less power than the red, but being a 1 for 2 go again at blue, gives us the ability to transcend off of it. Yes, this deck is more resource reliant than the bonds lists of the past, but you are a deck that does play a large chunk of blues and have the ability to tutor for 1 off of the Traverse Universe, so the requirement to have more resources isn't as daunting as you may think. And also, since this card has combo, it is able to be hit off of our Ancestral Harmony, a card that is still legal in the deck. So increasing the hit rate of this card is incredibly strong. As well as it does also combo off of itself, so if we do have multiple Spinning Wheel Kicks, we can get +1 power and a on hit to put it on the bottom of our deck. We're also on 1 copy of Key Unleashed. This is a card that can give us some pretty strong small hands. If we have a hand that's, say, a blue, our 1 Harmony of the Hunt, and our Key Unleashed, of course it's 2 1-ofs, but Key Unleashed is tutorable, and we can get a Tiger from any other means with something like our Stride of Reprisal or a Zen ability. Key Unleashed can come in for a powerful 2 for 7, as well as Key Unleashed is tutorable off of Zen, who gives us the Tiger that we need to combo with it. It's not as strong as the Mauling Key, since Mauling Key's 1 cost enables us to swing with our weapon immediately into a Mauling Key, or a Tiger into a Mauling Key. But Key Unleashed, if we have the resources, can still be an incredibly strong card to search for that'll let us get some free damage. We're also on 1 Harmony of the Hunt, as I already said, just 1 red. The blue version does feel a little off now, since it is a block 2, but it doesn't have combo, meaning that it's not hittable off of Ancestral Harmony. And when we play this card, it definitely feels like we want it to do the most damage as we can, since it's just a 1-of. This deck already plays 28 blues now, which means that I felt like we didn't need a 29th blue at having 1 blue Harmony of the Hunt, as well as knew one of our hardest matchups can play it and get a Tiger for some effects if they somehow also get like Sacred Art Jade Tiger Domain to pump up the Tiger, although it will go to... Actually, I guess it does go to their hand, which generally New doesn't get Tigers, but there are some situations where them getting a Tiger could matter, and it's also an attack they can't play if it's red, and it still just is 1 for 1 go again at blue, which isn't that strong. I just prefer red. That's pretty much what I meant there to say. And then for the last red attack in the deck, 3 copies of Enlightened Strike. This is a card that some Zen lists did not include because it was not hittable off of Ancestral Harmony, but since we are forced to play less copies of Bonds of Ancestry, having a more consistent card like this Enlightened Strike is definitely a boon and can help us out a lot. It can be a great arsenal, it can be something that can get us an arsenal, or it can just be, a 0 for 5 go again, or a 0 for 7 that's going to come in for some pretty consistent damage. This card in general is just really consistent. Before we look at the blues, we need to talk about the one yellow in the deck. Art of War is probably the best card inside of Zen, and Zen probably uses Art of War the best out of any hero. Arguable with Chain, since Chain technically does get a free banish since he can play the card that he banishes off the Art of War, but since Zen is a hero that generates a bunch of tigers inside his hand off of things like Stride of Appraisal, his own ability, and even Harmony of the Hunt, Zen can just get some free card draw off of an Art of War, as well as pump up his turns and make them absolutely insane. Zen is the scariest when he's stacking pumps like this, such as Art of War and Ancestral Harmony, so Art of War is a card we just can't cut from this deck. Looking at the blues, we are playing all 9 available Transcend cards. Technically there's 10, but you're not going to play Mistcloak Gully. A Drop in the Ocean, Homage to Ancestors, Passover, Path Well Traveled, Preserve Tradition, Rising Sun, Setting Moon, Stir the Pot, The Grain That Tips the Scales, and of course, Sacred Art, Jade, Tiger, Domain, to name all of them. Transcending is super important in Zen since you need to find at least one Transcend to make your helmet work, as well as Zen arguably has the strongest of the Mystic Hero's abilities, being able to tutor out any attack with combo in his deck, as well as generate a Crouching Tiger. To supplement those, we do have a few other blues, since we do need to play blues to actually transcend them. Alongside the attacks that we've already talked about, we play 3 Ancestral Harmony. It's just another pump, and it can draw us a playable attack, which is incredibly strong. Levels of Enlightenment is a great blue that we can play. Usable with the Transcend cards to gain an extra mode. If we pitch a blue to play the levels, we can respond with a Transcend card, and then still in response, pitch it to Zen, so we can get a bonus mode off of the Levels of Enlightenment. Most of the time, you'll be picking Go Again. If you can get a second mode, it's normally draw a card, but of course it depends on the situation. If it's the last thing in your chain, you have nothing floating, you might as well pick +2 and draw so you can get the most damage and get an arsenal. But again, it's fully dependent on the situation, and this card is just incredibly strong. Then we have a card that I normally don't include in a lot of my Zen lists. Orion of Mystic Tenets is a 4-cost instant that is legendary. It says, draw 2 cards, but if a chi was pitched to play this, draw 3 instead. Normally I don't include Orion, but since this deck in general is a bit more consistent than Bonds, since we're playing less cards that don't have Go Again, and more cards that do have Go Again, like the inclusion of Spinning Wheel Kick over the blue Bonds, we have more things we can still draw and be able to play out that wouldn't clog up our hand or make our hand worse, as well as something like E-Strike, which if we do draw multiples of cards that can't get Go Again, like if we draw, say, 2 Bonds of Ancestries, we can Arsenal 1 and then put the other to the bottom without showing our opponent what we drew, giving them information, or pitching it because it's a red, right? We really don't want to pitch those in a lot of situations. But Orion has an insanely high potential, giving us extra pitch for levels, giving us extra cards to play into an Art of War, maybe drawing us into an Art of War. And of course, this card is really only playable in Zen because of the 12-Petal Kasaya, letting us get a resource and then pitch the chi that we transcended to play the Orion just with the chi, drawing 3 cards, making it really, really strong. The final card in the main board is 3 copies of This Round's on Me. This card will not be in the deck most of the time, but we do need to talk about it because it's generally a good option to play this over something like a Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast, especially now. This Round's on Me, a 1-cost blue that blocks 3. Each hero draws a card until the start of your next turn. attacks that target you have -1 power. Very good into aggro matchups. You'll cut this versus certain matchups for something like a Snag or a Warmonger's Diplomacy, cards that we have inside of our sideboard. But this round's on me, I have in the main board because it's generally the most useful. This is a blue that replaces itself. It's a pitch for levels. If you end up having a levels that turn, it starts cards in your pitch. You could this rounds on me into your weapon, into the levels, into a Transcend, and get all 3 modes, which could be pretty nice. And of course, it draws you a card, so it could fix your hand. And then into aggro matchups, it just prevents 1 per chain link they have, making it incredibly strong in mirrors into other decks of the sort. That's why this one is in the main board compared to the others. Moving on to our sideboard, we only have 3 different cards in this sideboard. Blanche is just going to be our main popper. We don't have room to play disruptive options such as Command and Conquer or the weakest link, so Blanche is just the best option we could be playing. This will generally just come in versus someone like Prism, who has things that we need to interact with, but you can play this versus things like Guardian as well if you want, as just another bigger attack like Mauling Key or E-Strike that's good on a 2-card hand. Snag is going to come in versus New. Main reason is because New is very annoying and a very bad matchup for you, especially now, because if they get rid of your bonds, you're not getting any more. You only have 3. You need to be super careful with them in the matchup, and a well-timed Snag can be a perfect turn for you to keep 4 cards, maybe throw an equipment in front of the attack that you're snagging, and then come in with a big turn back. When you bring in Snag, you do need to go down this rounds on me because you don't want New to play it against you. You also want to go down Levels of Enlightenment because you don't want them to play it for free. And you also want to go down Orion because you don't want them to play that for free. Into New, you're going to bring in Snags, Warmongers, as well as Blanche. Some number of copies of them. Yes, you go down your blue count versus New, but it is the most annoying matchup you could possibly play, and you're going to end up playing more 2-card hands into that matchup, so going up Blanches as well could be nice. It's up to you on the amounts. You could go down, you're going down 7, obviously, but you could go up, you're definitely going up all 3 Snag, but you could go up 1 Warmongers, 3 Blanche, 2 Blanche, 2 Warmongers, all 3 Warmongers, 1 Blanche. I'd say probably 2 and 2, or 3 Blanche, 1 Warmongers, but that is up to you. I haven't played the most New with this deck. I've just played the like a very few amount of games. I did want to get this video out sort of as soon as possible, but it is very similar to the original Zen list before, just with a little more consistency to them and not so much reliant on bonds. The last card in the deck, of course, is Warmonger's Diplomacy, because this is good into your other bad matchups. Stuff like Azalea hurt really badly, and this card's very good into them. Of course, their new gloves can help alleviate that, but you still want Warmongers versus them. Normally, these 2 blues come in instead of this rounds on me for those types of matchups. Of course, I did say go down Levels versus New because you don't want them to have it. I guess you could keep some in if you really wanted to, but be very careful about them getting banished. But you really don't want to play this rounds on me or Orion into those matchups. I guess you could get away with Orion if you wanted to, but New is very tough for Zen, especially now since you don't have as high of a combo potential to burst them down. You're going to have to play very, very safe with what you're letting them banish from you. But with all of that, that's going to be the end of the video. As I said before, soon we're going to take a look at a Katsu list with the Bonds of Ancestry update. And then I've been working on a few other lists that I'm excited to share. But with all that, if any of you went to any national events, I hope you had a fun time. It's been a great nationals season, and I can't wait to see what comes next for skirmish season. I believe is at the end of the month. And do we have a ProQuest season? Whatever the next local store seat. Is there a local store seat that isn't skirmish in between Amsterdam? Actually, there might not be. So good luck at your skirmishes. I know they're coming up, and good luck at Pro Tour Amsterdam or any events there if you are going. I'm going to try to be at the Battle Hard in New Jersey on at least one day if any of you are showing up. So maybe I'll see you there. With all that, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.